Welcome to the Concerned Educators Against Forced Unionism lunch break, and I'm your host today. And our guest is Kali Fantanilla. Kali is a teacher and a Capital Research Senior Fellow who focuses primarily on K through 12 education. She's an experienced credentialed educator who has worked in both public and private schools. Kali's statement on Prop 16 in California helped expose reverse racism and new extreme versions of affirmative action in 2020. She's written a guide on the dangers of critical race theory. Uh, so you can imagine Kali has become a target of the NEA, AFT, and as well as other anti-individual rights organizations. Kali remains very busy. She has founded the Exodus Institute, a fully accredited K through 12 online school that seeks to redefine education by joining technology and traditional values. And she has been featured in magazines, newspapers, television, and radio all across the country. So I want to welcome Kali and thank you for joining the Sifu lunch break.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, Kali, I first became aware of the depth of your activities after I came across your article about the president of the teachers union tries to rewrite history and fails. And I decided, I need to know more about this author. And you have a remarkable life, seemingly a perpetual amount of energy. Before we get directly into our subject, National Teacher Union's presidents alienating teachers, would you mind briefly telling us about some of your projects and your online school, the Exodus Institute?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I am a former public school teacher of 15 years. I taught in California, Salinas, California, for the majority of my career, which is where we get most of our strawberries. It's a very agriculture hot area where they grow lettuce and strawberries. A lot of migrant students that I taught. My majority of my career was teaching Black and Brown kids. I taught the English learners and the low readers, and I loved what I did. I was um, born to be a public school teacher. I loved being a teacher, and I loved helping kids that are more disenfranchised or whatever those buzzwords are, the ones that need help from a good teacher. And I found myself about three years ago at this time realizing that I need to leave the profession because of what it had become, especially with the lockdowns in California and with a lot of the um, for lack of a better word, woke nonsense that they were pushing on our students, including a lesson that was given to me about Black Lives Matter that compared Black Lives Matter to the civil rights movement. And there was a line in the lesson that said, if you did not support Black Lives Matter, you would not have supported the civil rights movement. And I was like, wow, this is some propaganda they're trying to force on my students. And I decided to expose a lot of those lessons anonymously on Facebook at first because I was still a public school teacher, and then eventually decided to resign to really unload on what was happening to our students this last, especially 5 years. And because of that, I most likely cannot get a job in a public school again, especially since I was sharing curriculum online that, is supposed to be only for the eyes of students. They don't even want to show this stuff to the parents. And decided to open my own school with my husband, who's also an educator. And we have a K through 12 online school called Exodus Institute. And we have currently have 180 students, and it's fully accredited, nationally accredited. And that's what we do now.
That's amazing. That's it's I don't know. It's incredible just to taking the risk of starting your own school is amazing. Then I guess the accreditation was probably another hurdle you had to go over, and it's just it's really very very impressive. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have two programs. We have a K through 12 fully accredited program, and then we also have an enrichment program that is $20 a month that I personally teach because of course I can't teach all K through 12 classes. That would be crazy, right? But the enrichment program I personally teach, and that actually has lessons that counter a lot of the indoctrination that's happening in our public schools. And that program is only $20 a month, and that's for parents that already have a homeschool curriculum, but they want to add lessons that are by a accredited teacher to make sure their kid is ready for when they go to college, to counter a lot of these arguments that are being forced on kids in our public schools.
wow, that's very impressive. And there's a lot of homeschoolers in Virginia that would probably love to know about that. I know that we got a homeschool college just out in Loudoun County, so it's certainly very popular in this state.
Yeah.
Carly, it seems that the union officials have seem more interested in conflict and disruption using Alinsky tactics, which to me kind of alienates teachers from parents and even the community at large from the schools. So, Carly, this can't be good for teachers or the classroom, can it?
I don't think it's good for teachers on either side of the political spectrum. The unions are supposed to be representative of the teachers' labor, their labor laws, and making sure that teachers are getting paid fairly or whatever. They're supposed to, but they have gone so far from that. And they have really become just a political powerhouse and bullies. And as a 15-year public school teacher, I actually didn't join the union my whole career. I wasn't a union member. And they would bully you. The beginning of the year, the union leaders would come to your classroom and ask you why you aren't a member and basically scare you into wanting to join because they act like you're going to just be fired if you don't have the unions to back you up. And it's again, like I said, that I don't think they represent any of their members very well. I think they represent their political agendas and their leaders really well, but the average teacher that's in the classroom, the unions are not on their side.
Okay, so going back to that art, particularly the article I was that caught my attention about the big fail, I guess it basically comes down to, I guess, she's trying to rewrite history and not pretending she's. I mean, I'm talking about Randy Weingarten had
Mhm.
closed down basically all the schools she could. Um, uh, could you explain what motivated you to write that and what Randy and others probably should learn?
Well, I lived it like many teachers. We lived it. And I will say that at first, when the lockdowns happened, it was kind of like, okay, this is easy. And a teacher, if you truly love your profession, you want to make sure that your students are being taught in the most effective way. And the teachers were forced to become online teachers in less than 24 hours. I remember we got the announcement on a Friday that schools are shut down, and on Monday we opened up online. And it was like, wow, they no training. We're just thrown into this teaching kids online. And a lot of our students did not do well. And what's sad is that these unions were fighting to keep the schools closed when the parents wanted the schools to open. And really that was hurting our educational system because our kids were failing. They were not doing very well, especially with the way that they set it up. For example, my district for the first 2 months did not, if a student did not show up to class, we could not lower their grade because of equity. So some of the students didn't have good internet. So because of that, they said this class is you aren't required to show up. You can just have the same grade that you had before you left. And a lot of my students stopped showing up to classes. And for me as a teacher, that's my job. I teach the English learners, I teach the low readers. I That time is precious. I know that I only have those students for that certain amount of time, and they were taking that time away, and they were making it so that students did not want to come to class because there was no incentive. And I was teaching high school at the time, and I'm sorry, but I remember what it was like to be a high schooler. If I wasn't required to go to class, I wouldn't go, and it was kind of like a vacation for these kids. And then 2 months later, we had our summertime because lockdowns happened in March. 2 months later, we thought we were going to open up again. We were going to open at the beginning of 2020, the fall school year of 2020, 2021. And we didn't open up. And we spent the whole year online except for the last month. And a lot of the reason for that is because of the teachers unions. They were putting all of these stipulations that we can't open until everyone's fully vaccinated or until the vaccine's out or until, the school spends millions of dollars in safety measures, basically putting up plexiglass everywhere. Our school had to change out all their vents. I mean, they had all of these ridiculous demands, basically holding the students hostage. Like, if you don't do these things, then we're not going to come back to work. And that's where Randi Weingarten, she says that, oh, we wanted them to open. We wanted the schools to open, but we wanted them to open safely. Well, what did that mean? Well, it meant all of these millions of dollars spent, all of the teachers need to be vaccinated, the students need to be vaccinated, all of these stipulations. So again, she is really truly trying to rewrite history, because they were a key player in keeping our schools shut down, which is going to have permanent detrimental effects for our future generation, or the generation that experienced that
Yeah,
lockdown schools.
yeah, I mean, I've heard estimates that it's like almost a decade of education they've lost. I'm thinking, how can you lose a decade in a 2-year period? And it's like I don't understand, but apparently it just was. It's caused people to, I guess, not, I guess, unlearn how to learn, and now they're having to go back and learn or something. I don't.
Yeah, I will say, yes, it did cause learning loss, but I'm also thinking that they're exaggerating that a little bit, because they are
Okay.
also trying to cover up for the fact that our educational system was failing our kids
Oh,
before
I
the
see.
pandemic. We were already having only about 50% of 12th graders being able to read at grade level before the pandemic.
I see.
And so now it's even worse. So now they're kind of like, oh, it's because of the pandemic that,
Pandemic. I see. Not
I
the
mean, it did.
teachers.
And I'm not saying it didn't cause
Yeah.
harm, but they're also kind of using that as an excuse now for how bad it is.
I see. So the blame doesn't go back necessarily to the teachers. It's now being blamed on the pandemic, and not really necessarily the teachers are bad, but I guess they're
Yeah.
being taught not to teach too, as well.
Yeah. And I will say that the teachers that are coming in, this new generation of teachers that are coming into the classroom, who have been radicalized by their college education and replacing the older generation of teachers. Their intentions isn't to make sure our kids are performing on a global scale where they can compete on a global scale. Their intentions is to make sure that they bring in radicalized change and create a generation of revolutionaries. And I've met these teachers. I know these teachers. And even in my program that I did for my master's in education, I would say there was more of an emphasis on all of this radical indoctrination than making sure our students can read and write.
Can you give me an example of what you were?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I have really spoke up about is critical race theory, and I remember when I was teaching there was the mainstream media pushing out a narrative that critical race theory is not in our schools. And here I was seeing it firsthand in my district. So what my district did was they took the health class and they cut it in half. And instead of giving health for the full year, they started giving students a class called, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it. Oh, why am I blanking on the name of the class? Anyways, it's a class that's like about gosh, I'm blanking on the name, but anyways, it's a class that's basically teaches all of these critical race theory tenets. I know it's going to come to me as I keep talking about it.
Okay.
So in this class, I was sharing the same platform as the teacher that was teaching the class, because it was online, and I got access to all of the lessons. And in the lessons, the students are being taught. They were taught critical race theory explicitly, the definition. They were taught to analyze school policy through the critical race theory lens, and they were taught about hegemony. They were taught about implicit bias and dominant ideologies of the patriarchy. They were taught about decolonization. They were taught about graffiti as resistance. So kids were basically taught to use graffiti as a form of resistance. I mean, these lessons were bizarre. There was a whole unit on Black Lives Matter. Um, Gosh, I really hope I can remember the name. I almost want to look it up on my phone. It's going to be a required class in all of California. They want for graduation, required class. I got to look up this name because I don't want to leave
Okay.
without um, ethnic studies. There we go. It's
Well, that
called ethnic
doesn't sound
studies.
bad. That doesn't
Yes,
sound
it
bad.
doesn't sound bad, right? But it's basically an excuse to put in a lot of woke ideology, and I saw those lessons firsthand. It's going to be a required class for students to graduate. And it's not. It sounds like you hear ethnic studies and you think, oh, maybe students are going to learn about different cultures and learn about different cuisines and dress and traditions. No, that's not what the class is.
Well, I don't know how familiar you are with CFU, the current Concerned Educators Against Forced Unionism, but we kind of try to help non-teacher union organizations and teachers themselves find organizations like that, or at least find their way out of a labor union. And I believe you mentioned earlier that you actually never paid dues or fee, or I guess you had to pay fee, but you never paid dues to a union yourself, even
No,
though
I
you.
was yes, I was never a union member, so, I did have to pay for my local dues, but I didn't have to pay the national dues. I forget which one you don't have to pay, but in the beginning, before that, the Janus Law came out that Rebecca Friedrichs fought for us. She's a former public school teacher who basically sued and went to the Supreme Court to make it
Right.
so that teachers don't have to pay their union dues, which is
Mhm.
amazing. And but I did join an alternative, which was Christian Educators Association. I think the last 4 years of my career, I was part of the Christian Educators Association, much cheaper. I think it was somewhere around $200 a year, and it was my liability insurance. I think we had about
Right.
yeah, and that was there is alternatives, and a lot of teachers don't know about that.
Yeah.
And I mean, at first it was more of a financial decision because my first teaching job, I was think paid around $32,000 a year, and I just like we already had so much money being deducted from our check, and I didn't want more of that. And then eventually it was more I don't want to pay into the system that is funding things that I don't agree with as personally, religiously. A lot of the um, a lot of what the union stands for is not really about protecting our teachers' jobs. It's more about funding these leftist agendas. And I saw that when I fought Prop 16 in California, which was going to bring affirmative action into all of the government jobs.
Mhm.
And the teachers union, donated over $1 million for yes on Prop 16, the California Teachers Union.
Mhm. And
So, and I was a no vote. I actually wrote one of the rebuttal statements that was in the ballot guide. So I would basically be funding against myself if my own, what I believe in, which is we shouldn't be judging people based on the color of their skin and giving preferences to skin color. And that's what affirmative action is. And the teachers union was donating to that in order for it to pass.
right. Now, I think you mentioned to me earlier that you were kind of a liberal before, and so I guess sometime during this process of edu- teaching yourself, you realize, I guess, some of the things are being pushed down your throat at the time, and you were going, I don't agree with this. What was, I guess, the switch or that turned you from, I guess, going along with it to saying, I got to fight this because that's a
Well,
big step.
yes, we just had an article come out on Capital Research Center that I wrote that came out today, and it's on Common Core and the Bill Gates Foundation. And Common Core came out during Obama, and that was one of his big. He was very prideful about having federal standards for every single state for English and math. And that was funded by the Bill Gates Foundation, that whole push. And so I wrote an article about that. And in it, I shared a bit of my story where that was really one of the reasons why I left the left is the Common Core standards. Because when they came out, they really handcuffed us teachers. Like we're supposed to have autonomy in our classroom. We're supposed to have autonomy in our state, and really teach to the students that are in our state. And here comes these Common Core standards, and some of them were straight up bizarre. And it's been a major failure for our students. And that's when I started waking up, when I was like, wow, this federal government is coming down and forcing these standards on every single state and saying that if you don't take on these standards, you're going to lose funding. And that felt very opposite of what I stand for and what I think that teachers. Why do we go and get these masters in education and learn and become masters of our profession when the federal government can just come in and threaten us? And if we don't teach it this certain way, because this Common Core standards are very specific, then you're going to lose funding for your school, and then we're going to test you on these standards. And if your students don't do well on the testing of these standards, your school's going to face consequences. And I was like, wow, this is not what I stand for. And so I would say Common Core was really one of the last straws for me with that, because it just I didn't like it. It seemed like something in my mind as an ignorant person, something the right would do. They would come in and say, you have to do this, right? And here we are having Obama, this beacon of hope that I thought he was, and coming in and forcing us to teach these standards. And that was very upsetting for me as a teacher. And it made it so our job was a lot harder and we weren't able to teach our students as effectively as we could because of these standards, especially in math. I don't even know how these math teachers survive with the Common Core standards. I think a lot of them kind of go around it now.
Well, that's interesting. Could you elaborate a little bit on that math part? I like math myself, and I'm just kind of
My
curious.
husband loves math too. Well, the Common Core standards, they teach a whole different way of doing long division. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So it made it so that they're really into emphasizing making sure that kids can critically think about. So when you used to teach math, you'd be like, okay, here's the rule, and this is it, right? And you learn the rule, and then you figure it out. It is what it is. You don't really need to understand the deep nuances on why the rule is like that for math. And so
Right.
what Common Core does is they emphasize learning about the why and the rule, and it's kind of really high level thinking. And a lot of our kids are developmentally ready for that. There are some kids that can handle that, but most of them are just like, just teach me the rule. And so Common Core math also made it so that, like, for example, long division is taught in a completely different way. So when a parent goes to help a child with their homework, they're just like, what is this? I can't help you with this. And it created this kind of disconnect between parents and their students, which we don't want. We want parents involved in the education. We want parents to be able to sit down and help their child. And that was the other thing that happened with Common Core math. And then on top of that, it's all of the testing that they had on our children, these high stakes testing that where teachers started just teaching to the test because schools would get punished if students didn't do well on the test. And so again, these math teachers who want to teach in a more creative way or more fun way, they're having to spend a lot of time making sure that these kids are ready for these standardized tests that lead to a lot of consequences if the students don't do well.
Right. I think they have that in Virginia because I remember my daughter going, "Dad, that's not how you do math." When I was trying to help her, so I think that some of that is all across the country now.
Yep, it is. It is. And it's not doing, there are some kids that can handle it and that are good at it, but in general, I think the old school way of teaching math before Common Core standards was better.
Right. Carly, as we were talking before, it seems like that unions, or at least there are activists in the union, the presidents and stuff, seem to be more interested in conflict and disruption using Alinsky type tactics, and it's alienating teachers from parents and I think the community at large from even from the school. Um, is did you see that the whole time you were in California, or did you see that kind of conflict kind of grow over the years?
Honestly, I think ignorance is bliss. I think it's been around for a while. And now that I've done some research on the teachers' unions,
I see.
I was just busy doing my career and I kind of like didn't sign up, and that's that. But I think now American people are a lot more informed. I think teachers that are especially more politically lean to the right are a lot more aware of what the teachers unions are doing. If you think about union membership, it used to just be everyone would sign up. You didn't even ask questions. People are asking questions now. They're wondering where this money is going, what it is being used for. And also, there's more publicity on what these unions are doing. For example, when Randi Weingarten did that tweet where she was like, we were instrumental in schools reopening and we believe that schools can reopen. I mean, she got ratioed so hard on Twitter, which is now called X. I like to still call it Twitter, but anyways, her tweet, because and people were like, what are you talking about? So I think there's so much more information now. People are more aware of what's going on, which is leading them to become, you know, less likely to join and not wanting to be part of this. And like I said, it's just they were able to kind of hide the fact that they were so politically charged until like the last 5 or 6 years, especially when it started hitting all of us in our back door. When things don't affect you personally, you don't really care that much. But this
Right.
last 5 years, we've all been affected personally by some of the decisions these leaders and union members have made, especially as teachers.
Do you think that was kind of the downfall for them, is actually sending the children home to learn, and parents finally seeing what they were actually learning?
That was
Is
one blessing that came out of it, is that it did open up the windows to the classroom. It was how I saw the critical race theory lessons. I shared the same platform as the teacher that was teaching online, and we had access to each other's platforms. I noticed that my students were failing her class, the ethnic studies class, and I looked into the class, and I saw the lessons, and I went, wow, okay. Normally I wouldn't go into some teacher's classroom and see all her lessons, especially someone who's not teaching the same subject as me. But because of this, it really did open the door. But I will say that now that the door's closed again, and even more so, these teachers are, they are operating in a, they're being even more sneaky than they were before the pandemic, because they know now that parents are paying
right.
attention. And so they're, putting a lot of, inserting a lot of this stuff into the lessons behind closed doors. And we don't have cameras in the classroom anymore. We don't have teachers teaching online anymore. Everything is back behind closed doors. So I think parents need to be even more on their toes right now.
Well, Kali, I really hope you'll join us again sometime, and maybe next time we can talk more about some Alinsky uh, tactics. I can show you some stuff back from the 50s that we have of Alinsky training the NEA.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, and I would like to thank everyone here for watching and joining. And if there's any questions, that you could submit those, and I'll send those along to Kali to make sure she has them. And is there? I mean, I was just thinking that you brought up X, and I was thinking, I was just kind of Googling you, and I noticed you're on X, Rumble, Facebook. I think probably several others, the TikTok. I was like, okay, if you've got several of those links to your sites, I'd be happy to add those into this one thing so that our seafood audience can go find
If
out
they
more
just
about
look
you.
up my name, they'll be able to find me on any of those platforms.
Uh,
Yeah. They just
yeah, I mean, it's
Callie
amazing.
Fontanilla. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I just want to encourage everyone, if they're thinking about speaking up about what's going on in their schools or what's going on, please do. We need more voices in this fight. And there is a whole team of people that will back you up. That, first of all, the American people on your side are on your side. The majority of the American people are over this stuff, and we, there's so many organizations that are there to support you and give you resources, and you don't have to do this alone. I started doing it alone, and I did not, it was hard, but now I know that there's all these resources, and no teacher should have to go through, trying to share all of this, what's going on in our classrooms, and not feeling protected in their job alone. We really have a lot of support systems for you.
Yeah, you're a real inspiration. You really are. And Colleen, I appreciate it. And I would like to make a quick little housekeeping announcement. Our next lunch break will be on February 9th, and we're going to have it on California time. So it'll be 3 p.m. Eastern time, which I should have done for you now that I think about it, so
True.
you wouldn't have to get up so early
Oh, it's
for lunch.
fine.
And I hope if you do join us again, that we'll set it up that's for noon your time to make it a little easier. And I hope you all will join us next time. And again, Kyle, thank you so much, and thanks for everyone for attending. And goodbye for now.